A topic that's managed to come up a few times with the people I talked to about Bleach recently has been Yamamoto versus Aizen in his Shikai state. I have to be honest and admit that I'm not exactly sure why this would ever be a topic, considering all the confirmations and context we get surrounding this versus battle in particular throughout the manga, various databooks, or even some of the novels. So I won't waste any more of your time and go on now to make my stance clear, since I'm sure you can already tell based on the thumbnail, the title, and the connotation with which I'm speaking that I believe Yamamoto beats down base Aizen, and it is really not all that close. The arguments for Aizen are usually founded on statements like one coming from Databook 1 Souls that boasts that Aizen has matchless fighting ability, or reading into the narrative of Aizen's loneliness regarding his strength and how he felt distant from those around him. But I think it's important and would fit the context of this discussion more so to establish why Yamamoto would be stronger than Aizen right from the outset, with pretty straightforward scaling being the various instances where Yamamoto is stated to have the strongest Zanpakuto, boasting the strongest destructive power of them all, both in the first databook as well as by characters like Ukitake, who knows Yamamoto closely given that he is a father figure to both he and Shunsui, someone else who goes as far as to say that Yamamoto's spiritual pressure is beyond common sense. Characters like Noblehead Tokinata also state that no being could have beaten Ginryu Saishigakuni Yamamoto, despite knowing of and mentioning Aizen before this assertion, with even Aizen himself admitting that Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate Zanpakuto, without any room for doubt or question, resulting in his own belief that Yamamoto was the biggest hindrance to his plans, forcing him to take precautions, as stated in Spirits Are Forever With You and Databook 3 Unmasked, which similarly goes on to state that for 1,000 years, no one has surpassed or that no Shinigami has been born stronger than him, meaning that even the likes of Aizen is not an enemy. Some point to this excerpt and claim that it only refers to Yamamoto in bare-fisted hand-to-hand scenarios, but this doesn't make sense within the context of Aizen and Yamamoto's encounter in Karakura Town, which we'll go on to discuss now. Once Aizen and his Arrancar soldiers approach the members of the 13 Court Guard squads present in fake Karakura Town ready for war, the captains and lieutenants start to feel their opponents out, with Toshiro noting that they have a problem, that being that there's no guarantee Aizen won't intervene and attack the various members of the Court Guard squads as they are fighting the Espada. Yamamoto then very clearly hears this voice concern and decides to respond by releasing his Shikai to trap Aizen as well as Tosin and Gin, and flames with the intention to temporarily hold them off. Gin immediately responds to their entrapment with shock and questions Aizen, saying, "What do you want us to do, Captain Aizen? I can't participate like this." But this statement, however, is a mistranslation from Viz, with Gin in this statement actually saying, "With this, we cannot participate," meaning there isn't a single thing Aizen can do about Yamamoto's flames blocking their interference, even though Yamamoto is suppressed, as these flames are once again only intended to hold them off. The Gotei 13 then proceed to fight the Arrancar, with some doing better than others, but our next point of interest is another statement given to us by Gin when Toshiro rushes Aizen, saying that Captain Aizen isn't scary because he uses Kyoka Suigetsu. Kyoka Suigetsu is a terrifying power, but there are lots of guys who'd rather die than obey him if that was all he had. Those crazy Espadas all had their individual motives, but they were brought together by one thing: his strength. Captain Aizen's powers are without equal. Beware of Kyoka Suigetsu? No, that's reckless. Beware of everything else? No, that's reckless too. The sky falling, the earth cracking open. You can put all of your wits together to prepare for all kinds of calamities, but Captain Aizen's powers are far beyond any precautions. I'm sure you can already see the interpretation from this statement emerging, but this doesn't automatically validate Aizen being above Yamamoto. For one, Aizen's powers being without equal doesn't refer to just his physical strength, as Gin considers Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions to be a terrifying power, then goes on to talk about his strength separately, meaning that both are being taken into consideration when he says this, and that it is the two of them as a combination that he believes are without equal, not that his strength alone is unequal or that Kyoka Suigetsu is unequal. Yamamoto's capabilities also aren't even fully known by Gin in order to take this statement at face value, as Aizen didn't even know the power of Shinji Shikai, someone who was previously his captain, with Yamamoto himself stating as well that even when he had the chance to go all out against the Quincy's 1,000 years ago, he still suppressed himself, meaning that the true extent of his capabilities isn't completely known. Similarly, the idea that Aizen's power is far beyond any precautions doesn't exactly mean anything either, as being naturally stronger than Aizen even before his birth or whenever he begins devising his plans does not fall under the definition of what a precaution is, that being a measure taken in advance to prevent something dangerous, unpleasant, or inconvenient from happening. Gin could also be saying that Aizen's powers, which include Kyoka Suigetsu, are beyond any precautions for the 13 Court Guard squads and the Vizards, because they have already seen Kyoka Suigetsu's release, meaning that there are no preparations or precautions that they could take because they are already trapped underneath his spell. This would be in line with something else that Unohana believes believes as well, being that Ichigo is their best chance against Aizen merely because he is the only one of them that has not yet seen Kyoka Suigetsu's release. After the other captains and Vizards take a stand against Aizen resulting in their defeat, Yamamoto himself approaches with Aizen declaring that he has wasted his opportunity to strike, then piercing Yamamoto with his Zanpakuto. Though this is merely to draw Aizen in, Yamamoto does admit something here that is important, and that is him stating that if he had only seen Aizen with his eyes, then he may be deceived, inadvertently admitting that he is susceptible to Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions. But we'll talk more in depth about this later on. Yamamoto then uses the chance he has now with Aizen in his grasp to spawn Inet's Jigoku, an attack that utilizes Ryujin Jaka's flames to surround the two, only for Wonderwise to respond in kind by appearing behind them and absorbing the hellfire. Aizen speaks to Yamamoto questioning what happened to his flames, saying, "Shall I explain? Your Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate Zanpakuto. Of that there can be no doubt. If we fought toe to toe, you'd probably win. But when all other powers are abandoned to strengthen a single power, even the ultimate can be opposed. Wonderwise is the only modified Arrancar, and his Resurrection is Extinguir, an Arrancar created for the sole purpose of containing your Ryujin Jaka. Goodbye, Genryusai Yamamoto." To be completely and totally honest with you, this is all the information we really need regarding the versus battle here in front of us, as not only have we already been over the numerous statements directly affirming that Yamamoto is indeed stronger, but Aizen is on panel conceding that Ryujin Jaka is the ultimate Zanpakuto, as well as that he would lose to Yamamoto in a direct one-on-one confrontation. However, even further beyond these face value statements, he indirectly admits that he cannot beat Yamamoto on his own by going out of his way to create Wonderwise in order to seal Ryujin Jaka's flames, which further reinforces another notion I presented earlier, as not only does he need Wonderwise to seal Ryujin Jaka's flames, but he also fully believes that this handicap would have sufficed to defeat Yamamoto, meaning that he did not know prior that Yamamoto excels in Hakuda or bare-fisted hand-to-hand combat, adding further credence to what I stated earlier regarding Gin and Aizen's knowledge on Yamamoto's full capabilities not being concrete enough in order to take their statement saying that Aizen is unequaled or unrivaled in the Soul Society at face value. Some argue that both this statement here with Yamamoto saying that no Soul Reaper stronger than him has emerged for 1,000 years, as well as the statement reaffirming this from Data Book 3, are only declaring that no Soul Reaper has surpassed Yamamoto in terms of Hakuda, but this has no basis within the context of this situation. Aizen uses Wonderwise to seal Yamamoto's flames, believing that this would defeat him, even going as far as to say there's nothing he can do against this power. Yamamoto then responds by declaring that he is still the strongest despite the fact he was just clearly handicapped. Yamamoto nor the statement from Data Book 3 say that no Soul Reaper stronger than me in Hakuda has emerged for 1,000 years, but what it does say and what is being implied is that even with this handicap after Ryujin Jaka has been contained and he can't use his Zanpakuto, there has still been no Soul Reaper stronger than him for 1,000 years, essentially declaring that he could still beat Aizen with his bare hands, which Data Book 3 also declares as well. Aizen then goes on to make an admittedly impressive play, that being to release the flame Wonderwise contained indiscriminately in a manner that would force Yamamoto to stop it himself with his own body. This results in him being severely weakened to the point Aizen believes he can now kill him, only for him to still be blitzed by Yamamoto grabbing his leg and activating Ito Kaso, a forbidden Kido that can only be activated by sacrificing one's own body as a catalyst. The back of Volume 45 does state that this is Yamamoto revealing his true power, with a few noting that Aizen took little, arguably negligible damage from this attack, and it makes sense that this would be the case when taking into consideration that Yamamoto just got done having to tank his own Shikai's flames, substantially weakening his body and putting him near death, with a Soul Reaper's life force being equal to their spiritual pressure, meaning this Kido was much weaker than it should have been. Alongside the fact that this Kido sacrifices one's own body as a catalyst, and the sacrifice potentially not being as quality as possible due to the body that Yamamoto is sacrificing already being burned and damaged. Ichigo does do more damage to Aizen following this, but Aizen is off guarded, being taken aback by Yamamoto, and he even describes this brief exchange with Ichigo as his last vulnerable moment. After taking a look at their encounter in Fate Karakura where Aizen concedes inferiority to Yamamoto both direct and indirectly, paired with the numerous statements we went over in the beginning, I think it's fair to say that Yamamoto is stronger than this Aizen, and it's quite blatant that this is the case. But we've essentially gone over everything there is to say about Yamamoto. Let's move on now to talk about why someone would believe that Aizen takes the victory here. First example being this statement from Data Book 1 that I briefly touched on earlier, declaring that Aizen has matchless fighting ability, covering information from chapters 172 to 175, with Yamamoto seen fighting Shunsui and Ukitake in these chapters, yet Aizen is still declared matchless by comparison. comparison. The issue here, however, is that not only is this more than likely referring to Kyoka Suigetsu, since it's talked about right before this matchless fighting ability scan in a passage titled Kyoka Suigetsu's ability, but this argument also hinges on the assumption that Yamamoto is going full power on Shunsui and Ukitake, which you simply can't prove. Both Yamamoto himself, alongside the Databook 1 excerpt that describes this encounter, only says that he is going to punish or kill the two of them for their crimes, which doesn't require his full power as he is still considerably stronger than the two of them, meaning this matchless fighting ability scan doesn't do anything for this discussion. There is also the idea that Aizen felt alone due to his strength, as stated by Databook 3 Unmasked as well as Ichigo after their fight. The Databook 3 page in question declares that Aizen was stronger than anybody else, and because of this, he was lonely and misunderstood by everyone. The loneliness that came with this isolation was very deep and sad. There are only two ways to interpret this passage from this databook. The first is that this loneliness that the databook is referring to pertains to Aizen once he merges with the Hogyoku, which is more plausible considering that the databook page from which this excerpt originates is almost exclusively dedicated to Aizen's evolution, containing statements like transitioning from a Soul Reaper to the Castle of the Gods and moving towards the realm of the gods. In that state, not receiving any attacks and merely challenging itself, already a difference in status from the Soul Reapers. Aizen's loneliness is also only mentioned or seems to emerge once he fights Dangai Ichigo, as evident by the fact that Hogyoku subconsciously senses this loneliness, then prevents Aizen from evolving any further, or what Urahara perceives as the Hogyoku rejecting him. Whereas if Aizen had felt this way from the start, the Hogyoku would have rejected or not evolved him in the first place. The second way to interpret this loneliness, and what those who would argue for Aizen would say, is that from birth, Aizen was strong, even stronger than Yamamoto, hence why he was lonely. I want to go ahead and say that this is not the case for a variety of different reasons. For one, if Aizen was truly stronger than everybody else, there would be no reason for him to seek out the Hogyoku during his time as a lieutenant 100 years ago, considering it's a device designed to remove the limits and barriers of Soul Reapers and Hollows, meaning that Aizen had hit his limits as a Soul Reaper, as implied by even himself when he talks to Ichigo about said limits on Hogyoku Hill, and Tokinata says that no being during this time 100 years ago could have defeated Yamamoto, despite Aizen hitting the peak of his power. For two, we know that Aizen's loneliness due to his strength doesn't necessarily mean that he is the strongest either, as he is more than likely looking for a rival or enemy who can match him, rather than someone outright stronger than him. I say this because we see this narrative present in other characters like Unohana, Kenpachi, and Stark. Stark, who felt lonely due to other hollows around him being crushed by his spiritual pressure up until he meets the Espada, some of which being portrayed as relative to him in his base form, and Unohana in particular was present at the time of the original Gotei 13 with Yamamoto leading them, yet still found herself bored and dissatisfied with fighting to the point of wandering the Rukongai looking for a worthy opponent. She then meets a younger Kenpachi fighting somewhat evenly with him, and later going on to recollect this encounter saying things like, "There was no enemy who could even test your skills, I was the first enemy you encountered who rivaled your strength, or I was the first person you met who you could call an enemy." This child Kenpachi, realizing that he is stronger than Unohana, begins to subconsciously suppress himself in order to enjoy fighting through equally matching the power of those around him, leading to incredibly close, near-death diff battles like his fights versus Ichigo and Noyatora. Once he realizes his true self and kills Unohana, she attempts to comfort a distraught Kenpachi by saying that there are allies who rival him. Essentially, if the idea isn't clear enough already, these people who are strong throughout the narrative of Bleach and feel lonely due to their strength seek out others who can rival them or those who can be called an enemy, with Yamamoto not fitting under this criteria in their minds due to him being so much stronger than themselves, which is consistent with other statements such as the prior Databook 3 Unmasked excerpt declaring that Yamamoto has not been surpassed in the last 1,000 years, meaning that even the likes of Aizen is not an enemy, as well as Stark finding comfort among the other Espadas relative to himself and not people like Aizen and Gin who are stronger than him. Aizen being stronger than anybody else as a Soul Reaper and before his merging also doesn't really add up when you consider that the same databook states several times that Yamamoto is the strongest, with no Soul Reaper born in the last 1,000 years stronger than him, including Aizen, meaning that a contradiction is present as the two cannot both be the strongest. The only way we can adequately account for and respond to this contradiction from these two conflicting statements is if we recognize that the passage regarding Aizen's loneliness due to him being stronger than anyone else is in regards to his fusion states with the Hogyoku, where he is truly stronger than Yamamoto. When it comes down to it, there isn't really much else to say in Aizen's favor, with those that argue for him usually grasping at straws saying things like Aizen is lying to Yamamoto when he concedes inferiority to him in Fate Karakura, when this would be irrelevant considering that the databook and other characters reiterate these same sentiments. While Yamamoto is self-admittedly susceptible to Kyoka Suigetsu's illusions, this still doesn't give Aizen any win conditions considering that he can surround the two of them in flames like he did in Fate Karakura, or even use his Bankai if he felt like it, which even while Yamamoto is weakened, wraps his body in flames that could burn the fake Yuha's body, replicating the same Yuha who says that he could kill Aizen if he wasn't fused with the Hogyoku. There's not a a thing that Aizen could ever do to touch or put Yamamoto down, and I think that's evident by the insurmountable number of statements in Yama's favor, and by the fact that Aizen has to go out of his way to seek out the Hogyoku and create Wonderwise. That being said, that's about all I have for you regarding this topic today. I have a variety of other Bleach content on my channel you might be interested in, like my Shunsui vs. Ju Graham video or my recent video covering Fullbring vs. Dangai Ichigo, but I plan to make even more videos about Bleach and various other topics in the future, so subscribe for free to be notified of what I get up to in the future, such as when I upload or stream. Let me know in the comments below if I missed anything or other topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. Like this video to support both the channel and myself, as well as let me know that this is the type of content you want to see. Thank you all for watching, and have a blessed day. Let it roll!